Greetings, Kerbonauts. This is Kerbal Space Program. I'm Bob Fitch, and here we have episode number 7 of the Gateway Project, where we are launching the KSS, and I'm waiting for my launch window here for the orbit to go over to mission control so that we can go up to the KSS and deliver the P6 Truss. But Bob, I hear you saying, what is the P6 Truss and what does it do? Well, you see, that was launched in our dimension up to the International Space Station on the Space Shuttle Endeavour back in November of 2000. It was a almost 16-ton truss assembly that was going to get docked to the upper side, which you know is the zenith side now, because I talked about that in the last video, or one of the past ones. It's getting docked to the zenith side of the Z1 truss, and it was supposed to be a bunch of solar panels and radiators to provide power to the station and get experiments started and all that good stuff up there. Well, the P6 Truss here on Kerbin serves basically the same purpose. It's going to provide power and a bunch of huge radiators to the KSS and allow us to do some experiments regarding those space anomalies that were referred to way back in episode number 1, because you see, they have still been going on. We're experiencing space anomalies in various locations on Kerbin and in space around the space station, and we need to start investigating what those are. So here you can see I am dropping my boosters 2 at a time so that they don't collide with each other or explode or anything like that. So 2 drop off, then the other 2, and they're opposite each other, so there's no risk there. And you can see this launch is looking pretty smooth, right? Well, it didn't always go so smooth. I had a couple issues getting this started. Here, let's take a look. Attempt number 1 was struck by the Kraken. I put it out on this pad, and when I tried to fast forward, instead of going into warp speed, it went into physical acceleration, and that caused it to shake itself apart. So I was a little more careful, and I got it to accelerate through warp speed, regular warp speed, on the second try. But I had a little issue with the stability. So I was needing to turn the SAS off in order to get it to fly straight, because for whatever reason, with the SAS turned on, it was having issues like the Z1 Truss did. But even with the SAS turned off, I eventually started having problems. A little bit of a jiggle, a little bit of a shake, and the next thing you know, we're tipping over. Oh, geez, no. Trying to pull it back, and nope. Couldn't pull it back. So I just let it keep going. Like, well, I don't know. I don't think I can recover this. I could see the fairing there. The payload is starting to poke through the fairing. And I just went, oh, okay, well, this is going to be a glorious destruction at the very least. I'm just going to watch it go to the ground. And let's see, what do I do here? I don't even remember anymore. Did I stage it? Let's just take a look and see what wonderful destruction I had in store for us. Yes, that's right. I was almost out of fuel. I ran out of fuel, decided to stage it and see what would happen. And yeah, that didn't go so well. A little flip out, going backward, and the next thing you know, we're heading for the ocean. I have no idea what I was actually trying to accomplish right here. Until it broke apart right there, I think I figured maybe I could bring it down more gently at least and land it somewhere and try to recover some of the bits. Use those in the next version of it or something. But yeah, I got debris going everywhere. And the truss is now completely powerless, except for maybe a little tug, which isn't going to do anything. So that one is back to the drawing board. But you know what you do when a rocket isn't performing properly, right? You either add more boosters, or you add more struts, or probably both. Well, in this particular case, I decided my issue was I needed more struts. So I went inside the fairing, and I put some struts up on the top of the payload and down at the bottom of the payload, and then I ran those struts right into the fairing itself. And that held it tight enough that now I was finally able to actually get it to launch. And that's what you're looking at here. This one is going much, much better. It was very smooth. Once again proving the answer definitely is boosters or struts, or boosters and struts. Anyway, we are above the atmosphere now, so it's time to deploy the payload. Take a look at that P6 Truss. Look at that beauty. Man, that is the biggest one I have built yet for this station, I think. I think it's the heaviest. I think it's the longest. This thing is quite a complex little bit of machinery here. Anyway, so we have dropped our stage, our fairing, our interstage in the engine. We've powered up. We're heading out there. I was fortunate enough that the KSS, was passing over us at the exact same time that the orbit was also passing over us, which is really wonderful. I love it when that happens because it means I can try to rendezvous much quicker than in other cases where maybe the KSS is on the other side of the planet. So here I am trying to get that ascending node and the apoapsis to meet, and then push them together. Once they meet, push them together up to that orbit. And because I'm so close to the KSS there, I'm going to try to go for it right here. We're going to go for like a practically ground to surface rendezvous. Or, what am I talking about? Ground to orbit, ground to station rendezvous right away. So just a little bit of node fiddling and figuring out exactly where we're going to need to make that burn to approach up there and get that intercept. You can see it's pretty close right there, but I am going to need to make a few adjustments here to try and get it up a little bit closer. But I think that we can make this rendezvous before we've made a complete orbit, probably. So we get that burn started with that excited little feeling in the stomach going, oh, am I going to make it? Is this thing going to rendezvous within an orbit? Well, here we go, and bam! Look at that one right there, a rendezvous. It's a little bit more than an orbit, but that's not too bad. I'm not going to complain. You know, sometimes you have to go around 5 or 6 times to meet up with your station, especially because of the way that I've got it on the inclined orbit too. You know, I like that I made that decision, but it definitely has added a bit of a challenge. So now we have dropped off that injection stage to go deorbit. It does have an antenna and a CPU on it that will allow me to control it and get it pointed in the right direction to do its retro burn and deorbit. So I fire up the engines in a retro position there and just tab away real quick back to the other thing. So what will happen is those engines are now turned on and it's just going to keep going. And it's going to deorbit itself because it has so much delta V left in it, plenty in order to cause it to deorbit with those engines that are still stuck on. Just a little bit of maneuvering, and here we are sliding up beside the KSS, and now I just need to figure out how I'm going to get this thing positioned. So I have 2 little rockets on there. One of them is the sort of finishing stage. It's the bigger one on the one side, which I have to decouple. And then I have a little tug on the other side that I need to leave it until the very last second. I need to use that bigger one for as long as I can. And so that's how I got us up here as close as I possibly could. And now we're going to switch over to that little tug. It doesn't have a lot of power. So that thing, I needed to make sure that it had plenty of monopropellant and not very far to go. And then, after a tediously long approach, ugh, this was slow. We finally get it down close enough that we can give it a bit of a spin to put it in the right orientation and finally bring it home. Dun da 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 da. There we are. All right, that was definitely difficult, and I certainly hope worth the wait. But before we actually deploy it, let's go take a look in the vehicle assembly building and see what it looks like. And look at this gigantic beauty right here. So that is the P6 Truss, all strapped inside its fairing there on this massive rocket. The subassembly I used on this one was again like one of the previous launches, the KSS-7 with the 3.75 meter expanded fairing on the top, the big as they come. This thing weighs over 261, almost 262 tons. The payload is over 31 tons, and the truss itself is something like 18, almost 19 tons. It was so heavy I had to put these extra boosters on there. These, I think they're the Pegasus 2. Let's grab one of those and see. Yeah, I had to put 4 Pegasus 2 boosters on there to help get this up into orbit. This thing is massive. Actually, I'm going to measure it using the trick that I showed in the previous video on how to measure something. More than 42 meters tall. If we convert that using the 60% scale that I've been going by for converting Kerbal into real world, that would be about 71 meters tall, which is bigger than the Statue of Liberty, bigger than the Space Shuttle, bigger than the Falcon. It's bigger than the Angara rocket. Now, of course, things like the Saturn V and the Space Launch Systems, those are still bigger even than what I built. Maybe I'll make something that big someday. I don't know if that's going to fit in here, actually. I'll have to check and see if even that would fit. But I might try making something that big someday here and see how that goes. But yeah, I needed to make it that big to take up that massive truss. So I'm not going to worry too much about what's going on down here in the bottom part. You've seen me take apart a few rockets by now. I'm just going to grab all of that and take it away and take away that injection stage. And I also have a little miniature, I don't know, like a little space tug attached to the top there because this is the docking side. I have to dock this down onto the station, so I need this stage here up on the top to be able to maneuver it around, and then later I'm going to have to undock it and move it over to the side of the station where eventually I will finally be able to decouple this and deorbit this tug stage and get rid of that. Alright, so what do we have in there? So there's 43 parts left. A lot of that is going to be this, and there's one more dock point in there that I can't get access to until we take some of this away. So what do we have on here? Well, you got your basic docking node, 3 massive solar panels, not solar panels, radiators for the solar panels. Now the solar panels, I have those on these special hinges that allow it to extend out. You can see my control over here for the robotics. All of these parts, these hinges, will all go into one group, and then I can manipulate both sides, both hinges at the same time. So the way those are set up, let's take one of these off, and I have on there the little back plate that allows it to connect, you can see right there, and then a hinge on a hinge, and that makes the 2 hinges stay flat as they open up. So one will open up one way, the other will open up backward relative to it, and so this top plate stays flat. So what happens is this thing just comes up and over, but it stays parallel here to the top of the station, or top of that truss. So if we take those out, now you can see that's another part that actually doesn't belong. It will get decoupled and deorbited with that eventually. So on the outside of this, we have a few lights, but I think I've taken away most of it. In fact, you can see the part count is now down to 9. There are 8. I just took a light off. There are 8 more, well no, there's not just 8 lights, there's got to be one more thing in here, but it doesn't matter. We're down to almost the base truss. In fact, I will go over here to where I have the welded part pre-assembled, and it's this one right here. I did a couple versions I was working on, and you can see those over there. So this one is the final one. Well, anyway, I don't know where to stick it. This is what it looks like if I could get it to look solid. And let me get some of this stuff out of the way just so that it's easier to look at this. Yeah, get rid of those. Grab that. Okay. Alright, so now we can look at this, we can move around it, nothing will get in the way. So as this basic infrastructure, I'm simulating some radiator ammonia for the coolant system here with these. Those aren't, they used to be xenon, of course, but I just when I modded the part and created this one big truss piece and welded it together, I just went into the file that was created and I deleted its reference to say that they were xenon tanks, and I made them ammonia tanks. And this also, of course, is normally a pressure meter. I'm making it look like it's part of the ammonia assembly. And that's just for eye candy. It doesn't do anything. It's not actually a pressure meter anymore. Again, I deleted the reference to it that made it a science object. So we have some batteries on here. Those are functional. Another ammonia for the one up there. Ammonia here for that one there. And that's it. Some handrails, and you're looking at it. That's it. Yeah. So if we go in here, there's a little CPU pod that helps to control the solar panel flow rates and the ammonia and all that. If we were to slide this over so we can look inside, you're going to see that this is nothing but a bunch of girders just to hold it all together, and that's it. That's my P6 truss. Yes, fabulous. So here we are now back at the station, and you can see the deployment of those solar panels and how I had those hooked up. That is very similar actually to the way that the real ISS panels that are on that P6 truss deploy. And with them away from the main body, we can now actually extend them. And these are big. Because in Russia, when you have a reason to make something, you have a reason to make something big. Okay, that was a horrible accent. Whatever. So my gigantic panels are now opening and opening and opening and opening. Wow. Those things are gigantic. But, you know, like I said, if it's worth building, it's worth building big. Once those are out, now we deploy our radiators. Because those things are so big, they're going to be sucking in all kinds of sun and providing tons of power, but also tons of waste heat using the interstellar mod. So 3 gigantic radiators will more than take care of that. And with a little look at what the real ISS looked like at the same stage where we are now, I would say I think we're doing pretty well. Whoopsie! Except for one little problem. I have the Z1 truss. Oh, no, not the Z1. I have our P6 truss here rotated by 180 degrees in the wrong direction. And being the stickler for the details that I am, I decide I'm going to decouple it and give it a nice slow spin, 180 degrees. Get it into its proper orientation, and then send it back down and redock it. Boom! A little bit of a shake, but it looks like we're okay. It's now in position, and now I am happy with the station the way that it is. But the question is the Kerman version of Bob happy with the station in its current configuration? So he is going to get out there and give it a little once over, once again looking for any damage, things out of place, pipes that need to be repaired, cables that aren't connected, that sort of thing. We'll do a little EVA, fly around the station, and just get a good look at it. Once he signs off, then we're going to be able to send up the next piece of the space station, which will be the Destiny module. That will bring us up to the year 2001, finally. And let's see, that was launched on the Space Shuttle Atlantis. It was the 3rd shuttle to make a trip up to the International Space Station. I'm not going to be using space shuttles, though. You know, I'm just using rockets for this. I just enjoy rockets more than shuttles. That's all. Everybody has their preference, and that's mine. I like rockets. So let's see, what other things are we going to have to do? I don't think there's any EVAs that are scheduled for this. There were some EVAs in the real world, but nothing that really translates over to Kerbal Space Program, so I'm not going to do anything. We're just going to probably bring up some kind of extra canisters so that we can deorbit some of the trash. Remember last time in the video there, we ran out of space in our canisters and didn't really have any way to deorbit them and get rid of the junk. Of course, in the real world, there have been by this point in history, there have been a whole bunch of missions to go up there with Progress spacecraft and shuttle missions that were resupplying things, bringing up food and water and all that. I don't know yet whether we're going to launch either a Progress light craft or perhaps my Hydra cargo carrier. But either way, we'll find out in a future episode. So take it easy, and until then, I will see you later, Kerbonauts.